everyone, and welcome to the Winging It F1 podcast. We've got a little bonus kind of episode this week because on Wednesday afternoon, it was announced that the news about the budget cap will be postponed until Monday. So there is no news, and that is the news we're going to be talking about. We'll talk about the Japanese Grand Prix as well at the end. But of course, me and Freddie did touch on this very briefly at the end of the last podcast, which you should go and check out on all platforms. But last Thursday, I think it was last week, ahead of the Singapore Grand Prix, basically, there was reports and rumours that two teams had gone over the budget cap. Some allegedly they are Red Bull and Aston Martin, and there's a bit of a war of words with the paddock between Wolf, Horner, all the team principals who are asked about it. We're going to talk about it now and give our views on it. I'll come to you first, Freddie. What is your reaction to the news from Wednesday and to the whole saga?
I mean, the whole saga, I think I touched on at the end of our Singapore Grand Prix review episode, but I'll rehash what I said there and probably bungle it and say it worse or something. But the whole saga is just kind of having me putting my heads in my hands, and I'm just a bit like, ugh. Because I've wanted a budget cap in Formula One for years. I've wanted a kind of parity that can be at least forced, which isn't tyres. And if it's falling at the first hurdle by just, be it negligence, be it a stupid loophole, that's okay. You know, that's kind of okay. But if it's by some kind of weird big fight thing, and if it's just going to, I feel like the budget cap is kind of at a bit of a risk depending on how it's dealt with. And I don't trust the FIA to deal with it because every race is a problem, let alone one great big season-wide issue that can't be dealt with quickly. The fact that it's hung on for so long comparatively to 2021 and the impact it can have on 2022 and 2023 and the like for just competitiveness is leaves me feeling very disheartened just about the whole affair. I think the only thing that gives me kind of hope about the way this thing could be dealt with is the way that the Force India Racing Point Mercedes brake duct issue of 2020 with the pink Mercedes Racing Point car was dealt with very quickly in terms of when it actually got to hearings and got to sort of fact finding, and it was just found, well, this is just the case, so you must have had incorrect parts transfers, and the way we see it is as thus. And I think, you know, I have a bit of hope that there could be a reaction in a similar way to that, which is, you may think this is an appropriate course of action for the way you spend your money, but we don't. So sorry, we're just going to deal with it like this. That's how I want it to be dealt with. I don't necessarily trust that. But I don't know. It's all up in the air. And I think the fact that the whole delay to Monday has given me two kind of reactions. And the first one is, oh, thank God, we just can kind of don't have to worry about it. We can at least have hope that it's going to be a good decision or it's going to all be fine. And then also despair that it's going to dominate the proceedings of a conversation of another Grand Prix weekend in terms of speculation, if that makes sense. I'm sorry to be on a bit of a bum note about it, because I know a lot of people are quite excited about the drama. But
no, that's your opinion, and that's what we're here for. What's your opinion, Adam?
I kind of echo what Freddie said. I mean, even before, remember Scott Mitchell saying this, the race kind of bringing up the concern that it could be kind of, you know, if they do go over, then how are you going to enforce that? How are you going to punish that? And at the time I thought, well, it'll probably be fine. And it wasn't. So there we go. Don't think that. But yeah, it is just really difficult because it's not, whatever happens, it is going to, you know, a large proportion of the F1 fan base is going to be very publicly and very loudly annoyed at the outcome. So I'm not really looking forward to that when it does come on Monday.
It's already at it, mate. I don't know what you have to do.
It kind of all depends on how it's announced.
How can people have an opinion already on something that's not even been brought to conclusion? You can't have an opinion.
You can have an opinion. No, you can have an opinion on. You can have an opinion. Not on the findings. No, but you can have an opinion on potential breaches of regulation, no matter how it's happened. You can sit back and say that it's not a small breach or a minor major material, whatever. You can still say, well, I disagree with this being done against the regulations, you can say that,
Yeah, you can say like if X happens, if Y happens, this should happen. Yes, you can say that, but you can't be saying Red Bull should lose the title, Verstappen should lose the title based off a rumor and report. And
granted, I don't think I haven't seen anything like from anyone like that I would take seriously saying that kind of thing. And to be honest, for the most part, I would assume that that's all kind of with the caveat of because they're not. I assume they're not taking anything as gospel until anything is taken is given as source material. So I think you can say, I think if you, no matter who you are, if you're a fan of sport, you can say, oh, I think Red Bull should be having a title taken away from them because if they've clearly breached the regulations. In a way that if they had a wing that was off in a race, they would be disqualified, and we'd all say, well, fair enough. Look at Hamilton in Brazil qualifying, for instance, last year. And if you were to say, well, for the whole year, they were funding their team incorrectly and is against the regulations, so I think they should be thrown out, then I think that's a fair enough opinion for someone to have. I think the conversation could get, and I'm guilty of this as well, but the conversation is getting mired in the fact that we're just conflating it and with public perception of teams and things like that, which is a conversation and a tribalism that has come in and annoyingly dominated a lot of sports, just across on every social media and all that kind of, and every sport. And it's very annoying because we want to talk about this kind of matter of factly, but it's leaving us in a bit of a kind of despair about it, which is a bit of a shame.
I mean, that is also because
the wider topic
because the like that's what's annoying about today's announcement, that there won't be an announcement, is that then it just gives, like you said, another 5 days, another race weekend, another cycle to go through before it comes, and that just leads to more tribalism and more people chatting shite and all of that. And it's just, I don't know, it's kind of
that's the people who are chatting shite, that's their own problem. The FIA
no, but it's our problem as well, because it gets sent to, or you can't avoid it really.
Yeah, but what I'd say is it is just super complicated. This was, in a way, it was always going to happen. Like finance and this situation, it is ridiculously complex. Like any financial job or market, there are different interpretations, and there will always be grey areas. There is no black and white here at all.
That's what makes it. That's arguably, to be honest, what makes it really interesting, and makes it a really. I'm surprised it's come about straight away, but I would have expected something to happen with the budget cap, with a breach or a complication or something like that to come about at some point. And the fact that it's happened this year, fine. But even if it would always happen, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it makes it, from a complete neutral perspective, it makes it kind of interesting. And the only thing is, it's just how the FIA deal with it that's the kind of worry. But I don't think it's a problem that this would always happen.
I don't know if it.
What are you arguing for no budget cap then?
If this is, I would say if it's going to bring this every single year, and I fear it will. Look at
it's a one opportunity to judge it on.
Look
and if
it's
dealt with in the right way.
For example, look at Red Bull. You got Red Bull Technologies, Red Bull Racing, Red Bull Powertrain. Then they got sister teams at AlphaTauri. How do you juggle all that?
It's complicated. But so is a brake duct. So is
I think it's different. I think finance is different. Finance is different to.
It's a completely different piece to engineering, because you can't measure it on a racetrack. But finance, it's not like it's a public market, which we've seen in some governments finding very difficult to manage. But you can, you look at kind of accountancy and things like that, and everything's done to a balance sheet and that kind of thing. And you know what? There is a degree of relative simplicity to it, which is the most naive thing I'm probably ever going to say. But if you look at where, say take January 1st, 1 minute past midnight, and December 31st, 23:59, and look at how much money is spent over that period, or if you have it over a competitive period, I don't know. And if that is under or equal to the figure that you're allowed to spend, then that's fine, surely.
But getting to that number is ridiculously comple's, and
that's
you can get millions
in
difference.
That is what they've signed up to. I'm with Freddie.
That's what we'll see.
Yeah, that's what they've been tasked to do. That's what they signed up to do, and they have that figure. And I think it is, it's black and white, as Freddie said, that there's a certain amount that you can spend over the year, and it's it's not. There is that target to aim for or number to be under that. It is right there. It's for everyone to see.
If there's something that is seen as an exemption by a team and isn't seen an exemption by the FIA, similarly, that should then purely be cut and dry. It's what the penalty is, not whether it's a breach or not, is then the question.
I maintain getting to that number, I think, is nearly impossible for different parties to agree on a number for all.
Well, by the sounds of it, 8 teams did it, so it's not.
We don't be careful. We 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10.
Nigel, you do make a very good point in that there will be attempts at wiggling things and sort of saying when you pay an invoice and stuff like that, and interest and things like that, and whether things are based on market prices, whether things are based on prices at a certain point, and so on. And with so many teams being UK based, particularly the two that are implicated in the rumours, let's be honest, the rumours that Red Bull and Aston Martin being UK based teams, and all of the drama and in finance going on for 2023 this year, in 2022 this year, and then for presumably certification in 2023, it's going to be really also incredibly difficult as well. And I kind of do get what you're coming at.
For the bigger teams, it's not easy, but you can hide a lot of it, and that can make a millions difference. And it's just almost a case of who's going to be sneaky with it and get caught almost.
And I think there's an interesting way of looking at this. And I think you take Mercedes zero pod concept this year. It was released to the world. That's released to the world as a in testing. And we all saw it and thought, oh my God, and everyone's like, is it legal? We don't know. It's nothing we've seen before. But they were in constant dialogue with the FIA about the design of that. The FIA was surprised at it and tried to sort of see any loopholes. We're like, no, we're okay. And it's a consistent sort of thing for teams to put complicated and unconventional designs to the FIA to sort of look through and sort of see if they're okay. We don't know at all if there's any way that they've done this with this kind of thing with sort of financial methods, accountancy methods. And maybe this is the first way of saying, well, you're going to need to treat this like it's an aerodynamic device or something like that. And if it's not,
I don't think you can personally. I really don't think you can.
Well, I don't know if you can or not. I mean, we're not financial experts and we're not massive auditors, but I think you can. I think, to be honest, I think if there's a degree of consistent transparency, that would surely be better than and trying to judge. If you're saying, okay, we're spending money, we're going to want to spend money on this, we haven't spent the money yet, is this an okay way to be spending the money later down the line? And if the FIA can have a designated unit that can come back relatively quickly but with a polished answer and say no or yes, then they have something to stand on and the team has something to sort of fall back on, and the FIA has kind of the equivalent of a financial directive, let's say.
Yeah,
that's not a good way to try and send this.
On paper, yes, but I just don't think it's possible.
Well,
just like the budget cap on paper, it's like in football, financial fair play on paper, great idea, but as we know, or football fans know,
I don't think it really is.
Okay,
it helps establish teams and not. That's
a bad example.
It is a bad example.
This is the thing, like Nigel, like half the things me and you and Adam are all talking about now, we can't really base on anything because we haven't seen the first report, let alone criticism of teams or issue of penalties and that. Even if there was no complication and rumors about teams at this kind of point, it would still be really interesting to see a report on just how the first budget cap has been dealt with, and just as we need to kind of see that before we even judge on anything, like if it's impossible or not. I mean, there are very strict financial regulations and they're dealt with in a very different way to sporting and technical regulations, as they obviously should be, and obviously you'd expect it to be. But I don't think we can say it's impossible, because that's just, I think, ridiculous, because every business operates with a budget. Otherwise, every business would just go under.
I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, every business I know that's not gone under that's decent seems to kind of understand finances and things like that. And
I don't know. There's a lot of sneaky business.
There is a lot of sneaky business.
You can't go, oh, it's impossible because they're being too sneaky, and that's fine. Like, it's not. If
the sneaky business is determined and ruled against,
yeah,
what's wrong with that? Nothing.
That is fine.
But you think it's impossible to find out?
I think it's For every team, yes.
Because if it's
I think-
impossible
I
to
think
find
one or
out, why
two
have we
could be
found it
found
out?
out, but
Why have we
then-
potentially found it out for 2 teams?
I don't know.
Well, exactly.
Because they
So let's
clearly
wait for the
haven't. They
report.
clearly
We can't
haven't
really have this
hidden it.
conversation.
They haven't covered it up as well, or whatever.
Oh, we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
We'll have to see, because we don't know. This conversation is roundabouts now, because we're just saying, well, maybe this has happened. Maybe it's difficult to deal with, and it's obviously difficult to deal with, but we don't know if something's got away with or not, because that's just the nature of getting away with something. It feels like a really difficult hill to die on there. I mean, you're making a great effort at it, but
yeah. Let's quickly talk about Japan then, because we will come back to this, I'm sure, when the news is announced, whether that's Monday or whatever it is. Looking forward to it. It's back for the first time for 3 years. I can't really remember too many. It's been like Spa, isn't it? Classic track, iconic track. Not many classic kind of races over the last 10, 15 years. Yes.
Yeah. It's always a fun track. I think the kind of only kind of thing that I can really remember of sort of note is that there was a typhoon the last time F1 was there, and qualifying was on the Sunday morning. So it made it even more unmemorable for us, because we would have been even more asleep at 2 a.m, whatever it would have been.
It was when the Rugby World Cup was being held in Japan as well.
Yes, I remember that. That was always a bit later at a starting point for the big games.
England lost that as well.
England lost that, yeah. It was fun. But yeah, I mean, Suzuka's a great fun track. It's fantastic, and I don't know what it's going to be like in these cars. I mean, I think the S's and Degnas are a fantastic test of these cars, and I always remember. I mean, 2005 is the poster boy for Suzuka races, and I always remember whenever I've looked back at that, marveling at how close Raikkonen is to Fisichella on the penultimate lap through the S's, and
race of the century for me.
Fantastic race. I mean, the century's not over, so let's see. But
so far,
definitely the race of the 2000s for you, and a fantastic Grand Prix. If you get the opportunity to watch 2005 Japanese Grand Prix, please do. I did just give away the penultimate lap there, but whatever, that's your loss. It was 17 years ago, so spoilers aren't necessarily the top of my mind. But in the McLaren, he was able to follow the Renault pretty closely. So if it's able to pass in a pretty similar way, then I'll be very interested. Yeah,
it's not going to be McLaren versus Renault this weekend, is it, Adam? Who is it going to be? Red Bull, Ferrari, Merc? Yeah, Freddie, you think Mercedes, don't you? Actually, you said a few weeks ago.
Well, yeah, I think Merc could do all right at this track based on their characteristics, based on there being some pretty nice high-speed corners, which it seems, I don't know, it seems to remind me like of bits of Zandvoort that Merc were doing well at, and
yeah,
I think that could bode well for them. I don't know if there's any particular reason why it would be bad, but I don't know how the characteristics of the car changed so much throughout the season based on what I've suggested. But yeah,
Freddie's basically taken the words right out of my mouth. That's what I was going to say as well. I think no, it's fine. It's you probably said them a lot more eloquently than I would. Yeah, I just think it's a bit like a stretched out version of Zandvoort, to be honest. So yeah, I think I don't know.
Stretched out version of Zandvoort. I like that. I've never thought of that.
It does feel a bit like their last proper chance, to be honest. So yeah, I think I called it a while back, so I'm going to stick to my guns on that and say they're not going to win, but I think they're going to do well. But yeah, I don't know. I think whatever happens, we'll be coming away with Max Verstappen as a 2-time world champion. It's just how long that.
No, I'm not sure, to be honest.
I don't know. It feels unlikely.
I quite like Suzuka. It feels like the reason I was silent when you first asked about it is because I was trying to think. In my mind, I think it had a better reputation from start, and you are right that there's not actually been a classic race for a while. But it just feels like
2012 was okay.
That is a while, I'd say.
Yeah, 2013 the first.
So, but yeah, it just I don't know. It feels like a potential Phil Grand Prix, but maybe there is a reason that doesn't always come to fruition.
There was a big old hunt from Max Verstappen on Lewis Hamilton in 2017.
What, like a manhunt?
Well, he was hunting him
Just
down.
like
and he nearly got the overtake done. He nearly got the
running
overtake.
through Tokyo after
He
him.
nearly got close enough to pass him, and would have probably got past him, similar to the Malaysian race that was around then as well.
2016, Verstappen did his
Oh yeah, he
thing
did his
where he
move.
moved in the braking, so I
Yeah.
found that quite good as well. But,
And then when you think about it, you've
yeah.
had then 2018 and 2019. 2019, where the most memorable part was Verstappen and Leclerc banging into each other at the start, and 2018, where the most memorable part was Vettel doing one of his trademark spins. So, and they were all walked by Mercedes. So it'll be interesting to see if this is a memorable race or not.
Yeah.
2016 was memorable in the
Wasn't it?
championship battle because that was where, in my opinion, where Lewis Hamilton lost it, not where basically because he started on the front row and dropped to 8th, just
Watch the start.
botched the start, and that was after. I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that was after Malaysia, where he had the engine failure, which usually people put it down to. But he then had an even worse race that didn't necessarily lost him 10 points as well. So
Adam, don't speak. I will back you on whatever you're thinking. We can come back to 2016 in like 10 years or something if we're still going.
10 years.
I was just going to say
what's happening in 2032 when we're talking about 2016.
I
was just going to say
everything.
it
Never mind, head. Don't worry.
It sounded like Freddie was building up to just go back through every single Japanese Grand Prix. It was like, oh, and then 2015, this
well,
happened.
to be honest, 1989 was a really good race. With
1976 was a good race, but not
1976 in Fuji.
Suzuka. 2007,
1990
another good.
1990 was a poor race, but a very good lap one for drama. 1988 was actually genuinely a very good race because Senna stalled at the start and then came back through the field to overtake Prost to win the championship. If you want to talk about 1998 and 1999 and 2000, were essentially all the Hakkinen versus Schumacher battles. They were very good. If you ever want to go and watch, I think it's the 99 one where Hakkinen just gets a really good start. That's versus Irvine, obviously, but that was a very good one.
Yeah, right.
You also can speak. You guys can.
I want to interrupt your flow.
Was it 91 where Mansell broke his back?
I just want to keep listening to Freddie.
That lost the championship for him. 96, but we've got to stop because I've got a lump in my throat.
I mean,
all right.
Freddie's the one who put a kind of this is the time we need to finish on this podcast. So I was just
I know, and that's why I stopped speaking. And then Nigel, none of you spoke again, so I felt I had to speak again. But yeah, I do need to go.
Yeah, because I was waiting.
We're gonna go.
I was waiting to finish up because I thought, oh, that'll be fine. Then we'll jump in and finish up, and then you just like carried on doing.
No one jumped in.
No, we don't jump in. We'll be back at the start of next week to
do jump if you want to go swimming. Jump in. It's fine.
Bloody hell.
That's a good point.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.